dealing with the headaches of my customers and
Wow.
taking those headaches away from them. I deal with a lot of small and mid-sized companies, and these are
Okay.
companies that are trying to put themselves on a growth path. And
Okay.
more often than not, what they don't have is a proven, repeatable type of sales process. So take
Okay.
those speech communication classes as much as you may hate
Okay.
them. Talk
Yeah.
about ideas because even if you have the greatest idea, if you have the perfect solution in the world for that particular customer, if you can't communicate with
Yeah.
them, convey it to them, it's
Okay.
lost. Everything else is worthless.
Today, I will be interviewing Scott Paulsen, and we're going to be talking about what it's like to work as a sales consultant. So, Scott, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Well, Miranda, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. So, let's go ahead and get started here at the Job Dictionary podcast. We like starting off with three kind of rapid fire questions. So, Scott, in your own words, what do you do? Where do you live? And as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, wow. Okay. So, what I do is I am a sales and management consultant. I live in Houston, Texas. And as a kid, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So, now when did that change, and how did you get your start in sales and management consulting?
Okay, so the baseball dream changed my freshman year in high school because I did every sport just like almost every other kid, right? And so I wanted to do track and baseball. I was also very good at track and field. I threw shot put and
Okay.
discus. And the baseball coach, the high school baseball coach said, no, you got to choose between one or the other. You can't do both track and baseball. And because
Okay.
my dad was the track coach, I said, well, I'm choosing track. And I
Yeah.
actually ended up getting a full ride scholarship to Texas
Wow.
A&M University for track and field way back in the 1990s, but
Wow.
ended up being a good decision.
That's amazing. And so from that to sales and management consulting, how did
Mm.
that happen? How did you get your start?
Well, I got my start because I was forced into a sales job.
Okay.
My dream, of course, going through track and field, having given up baseball and then choosing my second love in track and field. Um, I wanted to be an Olympian. And I
Okay.
had elbow surgery after my sophomore year in college at A&M. And so that kind
Okay.
of ended that dream. But then I wanted to be a collegiate coach. However, when I
Okay.
was graduating, the NCAA was doing a whole bunch of different things, like reducing the staff sizes for coaches, different universities. They didn't think that it was fair that Texas A&M and University of Texas could afford like 8, 9, 10 different track coaches, but poor little schools like UTEP could only afford 2 or 3. So
Yeah.
nobody was really hiring. And so I had to take the first job offer that I was given. I hated
Okay.
interviewing, which
Okay.
my job offer was to be a stockbroker here in Houston for a little
Okay.
penny firm called Oldie Discount Stockbrokers.
Wow.
And so I took the job, and ever since then, I've been in sales.
Wow. That's amazing. And so now specifically with sales, are there any specific like specialties or niches that you can go into?
Well, I would say if we're speaking generalistically, so to speak,
Yes.
I would say sales as a craft opens up a lot of doors, opens up a lot
Okay.
of options and opportunities because as a sales consultant, I am industry agnostic. I've worked in industries from traditional ones like chemicals to printers and copiers to
Wow.
software to electronics, you name it.
Wow. Okay, so now let's transition into your daily work and your tasks. What does a day in your life as a sales consultant look like?
Oh, a day in the life of a sales consultant. Right now, it's
Yes.
dealing with the headaches of my customers and
Wow.
taking those headaches away from them. I deal with a lot of small and mid-sized companies, and these are
Okay.
companies that are trying to put themselves on a growth path. And
Okay.
more often than not, what they don't have is a proven, repeatable type of sales process. They don't
Okay.
have the systems, the processes, the procedures, the platforms, all those things that will make a sales team effective and scalable. They might have, a good salesperson. And so they're like, well, if we got this one guy or this one lady who's just knocking it out of the park, how do we get, 10 or 20 of those people? Well,
Right.
you've got to have a whole organization built around it. So that comes, building those kind of systems comes with a lot of headaches, comes with
Yeah.
having to deal with changing a lot of perceptions, especially the
Yeah.
business owners with, having to change the way that they think about sales and what they have to do. So my days usually are finding out what the biggest headaches are, curing those, and then building the platforms for the future.
Okay. And now, so I assume that companies reach out to you. So what's the process like once you start working with a company? Obviously, briefly.
Well, so the first thing that I always do is an assessment. I got to know
Okay.
where they are, and I benchmark that against best practices, global best practices for sales. And so I'm going to be looking at what's their current sales process, what
Okay.
kind of methodologies are they using, what's
Okay.
their tech stack, what kind of platforms do they have. Even before I get into products and how to integrate that with marketing,
Yeah.
knowing what the whole selling function looks like and benchmarking that against again, global best practices, that's step number one.
Okay.
um, and then thinking about and putting together the action plan on how to get from the current state to the desired state in the future. uh, that's step number two, and then
Okay.
convincing them that it's worth the money, that's step number three.
And so now would you say that this is a 9 to 5 job? Are you able to leave all your work at the office, or do you bring some home? Are you able to work flexible
Mm.
hours? How does that look like?
Depends on the customer, depends on the
Okay.
engagement. And Up until recently, yes, I've always been able to just shut it off, leave it behind, check out, so to speak, and keep my mental health, the work-life balance.
Yeah.
However, there's been this project that I've been involved in now for like the last 6 or 7 months that has just been um, unique in its
Okay.
opportunity and what they have to offer. That not that the demands have put me past that traditional 9 to 5, just the passion for what they're doing and the opportunity of this project. It's just hard to put down.
Yeah. And so how long would you estimate that a project is going to take?
Hmm. Could be months. Rarely is it just
Okay.
months. It usually turns into years as an
Oh, wow.
ongoing kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, usually a customer engagement can be anywhere from 2 to 5 years,
Okay.
and because where we're going from is that that state where again, maybe they have 2 or 3, 4 salespeople. One's doing great. They want to scale it. Well, that always
Yeah.
turns into how do you sustain that? And so that starts
Okay.
getting into recruiting,
Yeah.
onboarding, talent development, and the ongoing growth. And if the company is continuing to grow and to scale, the project will always be there.
Yeah. And how many projects do you take on at once?
I used to take on about 4 or 5 at a time.
Okay.
I've shut them all down, and I'm working on one singular project
Okay.
right now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so now, with that being said, are there any busy seasons with this job? What do you think about like the different times of the year? How do those look as a sales consultant?
Well, each customer is going to have its own form of seasonality.
Yeah.
There was an electronics company that I worked with. They would be real slow after the new year. There
Okay.
was a home services company that I worked with. Their busy time would be during the summer and then kind of die
Okay.
off around October, November. So we're in the sales consulting business, there's really no seasonality there, but you can give
Okay.
yourself some slow time during the holidays.
Yeah.
But everybody has their own every customer, every company has their own seasonality. Some are very busy during the holidays, and that keeps me busy as well, or used to before this project.
Okay. And so now for specific skills and knowledge that it takes to become a sales consultant, are there certain degrees or qualifications that are really required to be a sales consultant?
Degrees. So a college degree that will make you a good sales consultant. I would say you at the very least some kind of business oriented degree.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and I was a finance and accounting major from
Okay.
Texas A&M.
Okay.
And I have discovered, even though I never wanted to be a CPA, I never wanted to be an accountant. And that degree has really done me the most good,
Okay.
being able to look at somebody's financials, get into their books. The numbers just don't lie.
Yeah.
And when you can do things like reconcile some differences between cash-based income and
Yes.
accrual-based income, and start telling business owners where their operations are lacking just by looking at their numbers,
Yeah.
that usually kind of dazzles them a little bit, and that is a truly beneficial skill to have, because you,
Mhm.
you can tell people how to sell, what the best processes are for selling, teach them sales skills, things of that nature.
Yeah.
But if you can't put it into an efficient business model where the numbers will make sense, it's going to be lost.
Okay. And so now along the same lines, what natural strengths or talents would make someone a good sales consultant?
Number one would have to be communication. So take
Okay.
those speech communication classes, as much as you may hate
Okay.
them, get up in front of people, talk
Yeah.
about ideas, because even if you have the greatest idea, if you have the perfect solution in the world for that particular customer, if you can't communicate with
Yeah.
them and convey it to them, it's
Okay.
lost. Everything else is worthless.
Okay. And so now what do you end up thinking about all day as a sales consultant? Kind of what topics or subject matters would someone have to be really interested in to be a sales
Mm,
consultant?
business. Really
Okay.
just business, because sales is more than just being a sales consultant is more than just helping people sell better. That's the basic skill.
Yeah.
Those kind of consultants are a dime a dozen out there. You can find sales trainers, you can find the people who have their I call them the peddlers of sugar water, which are more like motivational classes. I won't name
Okay.
any names. There's some big names out there that a lot of people start running towards, uh,
Okay.
but they don't really make an impact on a customer's business. So if
Okay.
you're thinking about the world of business, the just how it's done, the different industries, those are value added perspectives that a consultant can bring to their customers. So and maybe this is just because I was a stockbroker to begin with, I always have business TV on either CNBC or Bloomberg, or
Okay.
something. Like, I got to stay abreast of
Interesting.
what's happening
Yeah.
in the world of business on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah. And so now what are some tools or technologies, maybe softwares that you use as part of your job?
Oh, geez. Outlook, the whole Microsoft suite of products.
Yeah.
That's, day to day, always. And, whatever CRM tools that my
Okay.
clients use, whether it's a Salesforce, a HubSpot, or a Microsoft Dynamics, or Pipedrive, or whoever, whatever it might be, those are the products that I use. And I
Okay.
really manage my whole day out of Microsoft Outlook.
Okay. Perfect. And now how do you stay updated with the latest developments of your field?
Uh, Again, it starts with a daily habit of being a consumer of
Okay.
business news, business information. And with the new wide world of social out there, which wasn't
Yeah.
around in the 90s when I entered the workforce,
Yeah.
with that social media, it is so much easier to do it now. In fact, the challenge really becomes how to block out the irrelevant pieces of information, because there
Yeah.
are so many um, uh, uh, people on social. I don't care if it's Facebook, TikTok, Insta, whatever, who claim to be
Yeah.
business gurus, and they're just spewing garbage. And you have to
Okay.
be able to discern what has value, what doesn't have value, and kind of choose your sources of information
Yeah.
wisely.
Yeah. So now kind of again along those lines, how have you seen this field or this industry change since you've been in it, and how do you expect it to change in about 5 to 10
Well, technology
years?
has made it faster. Okay.
Okay.
Now, in the world of sales, I'll just kind of give a little story here, a little anecdote.
Okay.
When I first came out into the world of sales, salespeople were screaming loud and clear, oh, voicemail is going to kill cold calling. Voicemail is going to call selling, because, that was the advent of voicemail in the
Yeah.
early 90s. We went from
Yeah.
answering machines to voicemail, right? Well, it didn't. And then in the late
Mm.
90s, it was email. email is going to kill selling. Everything's going to be done by email. We never have to use the phone again. Well, that never happened. And, then in the early 2000s, it was social. Facebook, LinkedIn, all of that's going to kill selling. All of that's just going to, change the whole landscape. It didn't. And now the screaming is, oh, AI is going to get rid of selling. It's going to make, salespeople are
Yeah.
not going to be needed. So none of that's going to happen.
Okay.
There is not an AI platform out there or any technological platform out there that can replace the salesperson. And I'll
Yeah.
go back to some of these studies that I've seen done by people like Gartner.
Okay.
And if you have a chance, Gartner's a great source of information. Uh,
Okay.
80% of the Fortune 500 purchasing managers would prefer to not have a salesperson involved in the selling process.
Hmm.
But those who go through and just either use like a self-directed kind of purchasing or some kind of AI directed purchasing, something like 75% of those who do that end up having
Wow.
buyer's remorse. So the
Okay.
role of the salesperson, as it's morphing, as I've seen it morph over the last 30 years, this is my 30th
Yeah.
year in sales.
Wow.
Uh, the role of the salesperson is morphing into subject matter expert. Okay,
Okay.
it's not about closing deals. It's not about having the little buzzwords that will close the sale, but it's about having a wealth of knowledge, having that kind of library yourself, that where you have use case scenarios for your
Okay.
product or your service, and you can help customers choose the right way to use it. That's something that AI will never be able to do,
Yeah.
because how do I get Miranda to believe that I've been listening to her, that I truly understand
True.
her needs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's if I can do that, then I can convince you that what I'm about to share with you as a solution and a use case, how you use my product service to solve that problem, then you're more likely to believe it. There's no
Yeah.
AI, there's nothing in the world that will replace or that can replace that human empathetic
Human. Yeah.
reaction.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so now I had to do some research before we got on this call. And according to Google, the average salary for a sales consultant is about $80,000 dollars. So from your experience, what do you think about that number? Is it true? Is it false? What do you think?
I think that sounds about average.
Okay.
But average is just that. It's average. It's not,
Yeah, average.
you're gonna have plenty below that. Sales consultants who are just starting out. I started out as an independent sales consultant, and I'll tell you, it
Okay.
was it was let's see, late 2019.
Okay.
And so I really got started about January, February of 2020, and we all know what happened in
Oh,
2020.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
in 2020, I was nowhere near average. I was way below that
Below.
average.
Okay.
But as the world changed and reopened late 2020, going into 2021, things have been, high above that. Now, it really is a blue sky opportunity
Okay.
for those who can bring great value to their customers.
Yeah.
So when you look at that 80,000 average, I look at that now and I say, man, that's pretty low. But I think back to 2020, I'd say, man, I would have
Yeah.
loved that in 2020.
Yeah. And so now to go into your perspective as a sales consultant, what parts of the job are most exciting or the most interesting to you?
People.
People.
Yeah, people are interesting creations,
Agreed.
Everybody's
Yeah.
so different. Every challenge is unique. I might think I have the answer to a business challenge, but it always boils down to execution, and
Okay.
execution requires people. and,
Yeah.
and getting people to execute and kind of carry out on that vision, that is unique. Every single person is unique, and very, very interesting. It's very easy to get frustrated, but if you kind of treat
Yeah.
it as a game and have a little fun
Yeah.
with it, you'll never be bored a day in your life.
Okay. And so now on the flip side, what parts of the job are harder, emotionally challenging, or not so fun?
People.
People.
Yeah.
Okay. Great
You,
answers.
you gotta
Yeah.
learn, how to deal with it. And that can be
Yeah.
very frustrating. The
Yeah.
technology's easy, the systems are easy, you can come up with the great processes, all that stuff is easy. You can
Yeah.
Google that, you can find that, you'll find the 10 best ways to do this and that and the other thing. But again,
Yeah.
getting the people to do it,
People. Yeah.
that's
And
that can
people
be
are
very
so
frustrating.
different. People are so different. It's never going to be the same. Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
And so now, what do people underestimate about being a sales consultant?
What is underestimated about being a sales? Because I can speak from experience, but I'm going to try to extrapolate that out to what I've run into. Um,
Okay.
I would have to say the amount of effort required to really get that practice. If you're independent, to get that practice started. Now, if you're
Okay.
part of like a consulting firm, it's
Hmm.
still going to be the same. I think it's going to be the amount of effort that's
Okay.
required to get started. A lot of people rely on their what we used to call the Rolodex. That's your list of contacts, right? That's a
Okay.
1990s term. That's a
Yeah.
20th century term. So the first round of contacts comes from your personal contacts. Who do I already
Okay.
know out there?
Yeah.
That's going to get exhausted quickly. You're going to burn through that quickly. And
Okay.
after that, you've got to find the next round of customers. Where are they going to come
Mhm.
from? You got to go find them.
Yeah. And so now what do people overestimate about the job?
How easy it'll be. Or how easy it is to work with customers.
Okay.
I'll get a bunch of
Okay.
customers. I'm going to train a bunch of their salespeople and work with a bunch of companies, and they overestimate how easy it'll be. And
Okay.
there's the possibility to be some quick, easy wins. Those are always out there,
Yeah.
and I always kind of regret or rue the day of the easy win because it creates a
Okay.
false sense of what this is all
Okay.
about.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
if the expectation is set that it's going to require a lot of effort, then you're generally going to be in a better spot.
Yeah. And so now we want to give our listeners a bit of advice. So, Scott, what do you recommend that candidates that are interested in sales consulting do in order to set themselves apart from other job seekers?
Know the business, know the
Okay.
craft,
Okay.
know the different approaches. If you can't talk about the top five selling methodologies at the drop of a hat, you can't tell me what Challenger is. You can't tell me, what needs satisfaction is. You can't tell me what some of the other methodologies are, and you can't tell me their
Mhm.
applications. You can't tell me some of the largest Fortune 500 organizations and how they're selling, what their go-to-market strategies are. Um, I
Yeah.
know you're not really uh, a master of your craft. You're not really into it.
Yeah. And so now kind of along the same lines, if someone wants to make a pivot into this career, maybe from a non-traditional background, what do you recommend them do?
From a non-traditional background, um, be ready to work, be ready to prospect, be ready to
Yeah.
deal with people. Uh,
Okay.
be ready to have a value add approach to this. What
Okay.
differentiates you from
Okay.
the thousands and thousands of others that are out there? Any person, the way that I got into this was I was fired from the company I was working for.
Okay.
And instead of going and looking for another job and really
Yeah.
saying, oh, you know what, I'm just going to work for another company and build their company up. I'm just going to work for myself. Okay. So I
Okay.
got fired from the company I was working for. Any salesperson can quit or get fired and say, now I'm a sales consultant. So there's
Okay.
hundreds of thousands of potential competitors out there. Know what
Yeah.
it is that makes you different.
Okay. And so now what are some books, resources, programs, maybe courses that you recommend our listeners look into if they want to go into sales consulting?
Some books, I would start off with the 48 Rules of Power, just because that's what I'm reading now.
Okay.
It's fantastic. Blue Ocean Strategies is a great one. I would go back to some of the classics. One that always I dust off when things start, getting a little tiresome, which they do every now and then, is
Okay.
the old Bill Good book from the 1980s, Prospecting Your
Mm.
Way to Sales Success.
Okay.
Because it'll set your mindset on how you need to attack that phone and how you need to go out there and get customers.
Yeah.
Some of the other traditional ones, Good to Great. I would also look at Covey's book, Speed of Trust. That's what it is.
Okay.
Speed of Trust by
Bit
Covey.
of trust.
Fantastic
Okay.
stuff because again, if you're dealing with customers, you're dealing with business owners, whomever even if it's just you're consulting salespeople and
Yeah.
coaching them and training them, you have to get their trust. You have to gain
Yeah.
their trust.
Yeah.
And that really comes from a place of being transparent, being
Okay.
honest, being open, and, in some ways being vulnerable, because we're all
Yeah.
human. And that book, The Speed of Trust, is a great lesson in how to build that kind of personal trust and the risks of how you can lose it in a heartbeat.
Okay, thank you for those recommendations. Now, if you were able to talk to your younger self when you were kind of just starting out as a sales consultant, what would you tell them?
Now remember, this is going back to like the mid 90s. So let's see, buy Microsoft, buy Apple, never get rid of them. But as a
Okay.
sales consultant, the number one thing, the hardest thing that I had to learn that I would go back and tell myself on day one is you don't have to have all the answers. It's
Okay.
okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. So now finally, where can people reach out to you or where can they follow along with your work?
PaulsenCoaching.com is my
Okay.
website, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. We're very active on LinkedIn at Paulsen Coaching. Tips of the day, we're always posting out there, sharing our projects, sharing our ideas, and we're always happy to help young salespeople, seasoned salespeople. It's
Amazing.
all about, from our perspective, it's all about human performance and how do
Right.
we hit that maximize it, get the
Yeah.
most out of ourselves that we know we can, because we were all gifted and created
Hmm.
with special skills, talents, and
Agreed.
abilities. And then
Yes.
how do we unlock that and really just get that full realization of what we know we were meant to be?
Yeah, that's amazing. And we'll make sure to tag you on this podcast episode so that people can go check out your website and your socials. But that's all that we have for today. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for sharing your insight on what it's like to be a sales consultant.
Miranda, it's been a great pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it.
You just got one episode closer to learning about the world of jobs out there. To explore the rest of our career categories and find your best fit, go to jobdictionary.com to sign up for the beta users waitlist. Then subscribe here to find the next episodes coming out this week. And as always, drop us a comment, review, or message to let us know how we can better attune our episodes to your specific needs. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Threads, Pinterest, and wherever else you're on socials to go get our short, snappy preview reels that expose you to new job options every day. Because here at Job Dictionary, we believe your big aha moment can be just one scroll away. Go check it out and get out there. Cheers!